This camera is 15 years old, but I did purchase it for $70 to take great pictures in my vacations, and it does feature an E-Mount. What's good guys, my name is Oleg Nikitin and you're watching No Limits On channel, and this is the Sony NEX-5 from 2010, and look how tiny it is, especially with the 17 to 70mm Tamron lens. But it does make great pictures, so let's have a look. And let's start off with the price of this camera. I did purchase it for $70 with a charger, with a battery, with a little flash right here that goes on top, and it was in pretty good conditions as well. And Sony NEX-5 features 16 megapixel APS-C sensor, so we have a crop of 1.5x. This camera can shoot at up to 5 frames per second in RAW, but it has a pretty small buffer, but I did use it in single shot mode because I treated it like a film camera in my vacations. It doesn't have any built-in image stabilization, so you'd better use a stabilized lens like this Tamron 17 to 70, but it does become a pretty gimmicky setup because this lens is simply that huge compared to the body of the camera. In terms of autofocus performance, it does have 25 autofocus points, but it does work pretty bad with third-party lenses like Tamrons, Sigmas, Viltroxes, Meikes, etc. But with the native Sony lenses, it does work pretty flawlessly, like this 20 to 70 lens did have pretty good results with this camera. The focus was on point and it was fast, but with those lenses it didn't work perfectly, and even when it showed me that it does have the focus point with the green boxes around, when I took the picture it wasn't in focus completely, so keep that in mind. I took only one lens to my vacation to pair with Sony NEX-5, and this is the Viltrox 27mm f1.2 lens for APS-C Sony cameras. It's an equivalent of about 40mm lens, and the background blur and separation like if it was an f1.8 lens, and as you can see on the examples, we have really nice autofocus backgrounds, and 40mm is a nice equivalent focal length for travels in my opinion. Also, this lens does feature an aperture ring, which is very helpful because on the body of the camera itself we have only one wheel, and it's a pain to change the settings if your lens doesn't have an aperture ring, so a nice touch. And since the autofocus performance is pretty poor with third-party lenses, I did use the manual focus, but when I turn the ring, the camera turns on the helper for the manual focusing, it punches in like 8 times, and I can focus precisely, and then I press the shutter button. But guys, keep in mind that not all third-party lenses are working in manual focus with this camera, because right now I'm filming with Meike 35mm f2 lens, and when I did attach this lens to this camera, it didn't work in terms of manual focus, so I turned the ring but nothing happens. And guys, please check if your lens and camera combination does work for manual focusing before you purchase it. And I do think guys that this camera would be a great pair to manual lenses, especially some vintage lenses. You simply reassign one of the buttons to punch in while focusing, and you'll have the experience of like a film camera. And as I said guys, we have a little flash right here, and with it you can get something like a vintagey looking filmic like photos that you shot on an old film camera. To be honest, I forgot to take it with me to my vacations, but I did test it and it looks pretty nice. But guys, this camera is definitely not made for filming video. You can shoot it up to 1080p, but you cannot set the manual settings, so the auto white balance and the auto exposure is not helping you a lot when you film video, and it also doesn't have any built-in stabilization. So this camera is definitely not for video, it's mostly for photos, but there is a NEX-5N and NEX-5T cameras, and they have improved video capabilities and the ability to set manual settings in video mode. And now guys, let's take a closer look at the buttons and dials and the menu system of this camera. So here we have a shutter button, the turn on off button, the playback button, the movie button, also 2 little microphones and a slot for the flash itself. On the screen itself we can see a lot of different signs, and it's almost the layout of the modern Sony cameras as well. You can change it via the display button right here, as you can tell. And also we have a flippable screen, so here we have 2 settings, to shoot from the lower angle and to shoot from a higher angle like this. And as you can see, I have turned on the magnifier by turning the ring, the focusing ring of my lens. Also here you have different settings. For example, on this panel you have the menu setting, and the menu itself is with the tiles, pretty old-fashioned one, but you have a lot of customizability and it's pretty easy to navigate. Also guys, here we have the drive mode. You can use the continuous mode or a single mode. I did shoot in single mode almost all the time. Also here you have your flash settings. The flash should be attached if you want to use it. also the display settings. Also in the lower part we have the changeable aperture and shutter, so you can dial in your shutter and aperture by using this button, and also this button is for ISO, and I did reassign this button as well. And also guys, here we have a 1/4-20 mount, as well as the battery, the Sony's 50 series battery, not the best one, but still it's very compact, and the SD card, the big one. And also on the side we have a Type B USB-C connector, or USB-C, Type B USB connector. Of course, I didn't have this cable in the kit. And also here we have a mini HDMI. I didn't use any of those ports, to be honest. And oh no, the camera and the lens combination held up pretty well, because I have the aperture ring right here, and I do have all the settings at my fingertips, so no complaints here. It could be better, but it's okay. And speaking of battery life, guys, you could imagine that it could be very poor because of a very small battery, and this battery is pretty old, of course, because it's a second-hand camera and it's 15 years old. But to my surprise, it didn't drain a lot of battery juice, because it doesn't use a lot of energy. The screen itself is not that bright, but it was okay in bright sunlight. It's a million dots screen, it's pretty sharp, to be honest. And also this camera was able to give me around 200 to 300 photos during one charge, and it's pretty okay for a casual walk around scenario for vacations. And I didn't charge this battery for like 1 or 2 days at all. So the battery lasted me for at least 1 full day, maybe even 2 full days, but I didn't use the camera like crazy. I did turn it off when walking from location to location. But all in all, guys, zero complaints about the battery life. But what about the image quality? To be honest, guys, the RAWs, the 16 megapixel RAWs from this camera are not that far off from the Sony A6700, for example. Of course, the dynamic range is not that great, but the feeling of the image, the vibe of the image, kind of a vintagey look, or the filmic look of the photos is there. My wife is a photographer, and she did say that the RAWs are great, and she can push and pull the image a lot. And guys, the best feature about this camera is the Sony E-Mount, because you can use a ton of different lenses. For example, the Viltrox 27 f1.2, and the lens is much more important than the sensor, as you might remember. Or you can use something like this Tamron lens for versatility, 17 to 70 millimeter. You can even put something like 100 to 400 millimeter lens and do some wildlife photography. So all in all, this camera with this sensor is pretty good even in 2025. You can just see that in the images I'm showing you right now. And guys, to be honest, I did enjoy this camera in my vacations thanks to its size and weight. It weighs almost nothing, and if I were to use a little different lens, a smaller one, it would be even smaller and even more compact. And also, guys, I'm not afraid of somebody stealing this camera because it costs almost nothing, like 70 bucks. It's nothing compared to any other camera you can buy, like a modern one like A6700 for $1,000, for example. So all in all, guys, I'm very satisfied with this camera, and I do recommend anybody trying this camera out in your vacations. Just purchase this one. 70 bucks is a no deal. And if you have some E-mount glass, you'll be having a lot of fun with this camera. So guys, to conclude, why you even need such a camera in 2025, 26, 27, or even in 2030? So basically, it's very affordable and it improves your photo capabilities a lot. You start thinking about the shot, you start focusing manually if you use a manual glass or third-party glass, as I said before. You start to think about the composition more, about the lighting more, and you do less images, but the quality of those images is simply better than taking it with a cell phone or with a pretty modern camera and like doing a ton of shots in each and every location. So I can highly recommend purchasing one of those and trying it out for yourself. If you did enjoy this idea and this video, please smash the like and subscribe buttons and hit the notifications bell. And right here, I have a full playlist of tech reviews on my channel, and I'll see you right there, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye.